Welcome to Diversity in Games with Juicy Juicin'. That's me! Today we're talking about Lara Croft. That's not me. But she's really awesome. Few characters in gaming have ever reached the notoriety of Lara Croft. The busty bombshell first burst into the gaming scene in 1996, quite literally guns blazing, and created one of the best-selling game franchises to date. And the original game itself sold millions of copies. And it wasn't just the gaming world that fell in love with her. Lara Croft's popularity landed her in articles in magazines that had nothing to do with gaming, which, considering in 1996, gaming was still kind of a niche hobby. I mean, it was getting to be more mainstream, but it still was pretty amazing for the time. Hell, she even got herself a vaguely mediocre movie series as well. But Lara's gone through many changes in the 18 years since her creation. So today we're going to go back to her first game and dig into exactly why this lady became such a cultural icon during the 90s in the first place. As always, spoilers are going to follow. Tomb Raider and Lara Croft herself went through many changes from its conception. Toby Gard, or oh god, it might be Toby Gard. I don't really know. I don't think I've ever heard it said out loud. It's Gard, no U there, but one of her original creators designed her as a man. But that made her too similar to Indiana Jones, who she took an immense amount of inspiration from. So then she was a woman in the military from South America. I also don't know if she was a person of color, because the only picture I could find was very blurry and didn't have any coloring at all to it. So there was a chance that Lara Croft might have been a person of color. That would have been interesting. But in the end, they finally went with a posh English woman because they came from England and they went with what they knew. Anyways, the first Tomb Raider follows Lara Croft on her ventures to gain the three pieces of the Scion, traversing Peru, Greece, Egypt, and even Atlantis itself to find it. While Lara originally began this trek for the sport of it, she quickly finds herself knee-deep in Jacqueline Natla's, an ancient ruler from Atlantis' plot to create a breed of super mutants to jumpstart mankind's evolution. And that's basically it. Natla's kinda crazy, but yeah. Most of the game's cutscenes just show Lara finding out more about the Scion and Natla's plans. So let's just jump right into the gameplay. Tomb Raider is an action platforming game with a focus on solving puzzles and finding keys. And you will find plenty of keys. At least you will if you can find them. I hate to say this, but the dated visuals really made finding things a bit of a pain. Unless you knew what you were looking for, it's incredibly easy to overlook things as just part of the scenery. And I'm one that usually doesn't mind dated visuals, but when you're asking me to find tiny things, I guess my eyes just aren't attuned to it because they all kind of blur together and there's no glow or just... Yeah, I just had a lot of trouble finding things and, that made me sad. But, while impressive at its inception, I personally don't think the controls have aged well either. Tomb Raider has what many people have called tank controls, meaning that Lara basically moves like a tank. I don't know how many times Lara got caught on corners and I couldn't really get her off of them, and oh god, pressing switches! If you aren't right in front of a switch, it does not register. And she always seemed to want to get caught right when enemies were attacking her, resulting in many frustrating game overs. This is facilitated by the fact that I played on the PlayStation, in which you had to collect save crystals in order to save your progress. When I wasn't running into ledges and accidentally falling to my doom, combat was pretty easy, if not just, mildly entertaining. And I got to shoot a T-Rex down in less than 4 stages in, so that was really, really awesome. But my misgivings about the actual controls aside, I have to say I really liked the style and flair of Lara's movements. It's clear that the developers wanted to give her a sort of catwalk model sort of walk, but the animations are really too primitive to support that. And the rest is really, well, non-gendered, I guess. Her running is confident and athletic, and you spend most of your time in Tomb Raider having Lara somersault through the air, guns blazing. And she collects a lot of weapons like magnums and shotguns, and, she just shoots a lot of people down and solves puzzles and grabs switches. You know, pretty awesome stuff. Basically, female Indiana Jones. And once again, just because the gameplay wasn't my cup of tea doesn't mean that it's the worst. Although I hate it and I'm not looking super forward to the next few games until Crystal Dynamics takes over. But hey, let's take a look at Lara's appearance. Oh boy, the most talked about part of Lara Croft is always her appearance. She's gifted in many ways. Her outfit itself consists of a sleeveless blue shirt tucked into some exceedingly short shorts. She always wears some pretty nice and practical boots as well. This outfit is used in all the levels, even in the ones where it would make exceptionally no sense to do so, like in the first place when she's in Peru in the mountains. You'd think she'd at least want some pants to keep her legs warm and protect them from scratches. But I guess, hey, when you're as posh as Lara is, you don't really feel the sub-zero temperatures anymore. Lucky. But more so than her outfit, we should really take a look at Lara's body and its ridiculous proportions. In particular, her breasts. When I say she got a lot of media attention, perhaps I should say that those are what were usually getting the attention. While people admired her cool and kick-ass demeanor, it was her really being one of the first women to have a gigantic chest in 3D that got her a lot of the initial fan base. They really were quite an attractive pair of giant triangular polygons, I've heard. Or at least that's what they've aged to look like now. But hey, Lara's body, yeah, it was just really frightening for the first 5 games or so. But that's what happens when you look back at characters that were sexualized with poor hardware, I guess. Then again, the rendered images weren't fantastically better. And her chest wasn't always that huge. At one part during Tomb Raider's development, Toby Garrett accidentally bumped up Lara's breast size to 150% of their original size. And although apparently he didn't want them to keep that, his coworkers managed to get them to stick. I always did like her face, though. They created a very confident-looking woman that oftentimes had that smirk that indicated she was always in control of the situation. It's also surprising that it doesn't look like she wore all that much makeup. Like, she might have had a little bit of eyeliner and maybe a bit of lipstick, but nothing compared to a lot of what mainstream video game heroines usually wear. And she normally wore her hair pulled back in a braid, but this was missing from her in-game character model in the first game. And maybe it's because of the limited hardware again, but I don't really recall any particular scenes in which the camera casually zooms in on her chest or ass. But that's enough for now. There will be plenty of time to discuss Lara's appearance in the future. Let's finally dig into her personality, because that is what we should be most concerned about. In Lara Croft's first outing, Lara is cool, calm, coy, sarcastic, and adventurous. The first scene in the game shows how Lara's already established herself as a famed adventurer and archaeologist. And when she's offered money to help out Natla find the Skion, Lara flat out refuses, saying that she doesn't have any need for money, she just plays for sport. So it's only when Natla shows her the treacherous mountains of Peru that Lara's like, oh yeah, sure, I totally want to do that. Or at least she gives a smirk, which indicates her interest. Our remaining time with Lara shows her as a typical Hollywood action hero. The game does not try to remain subtle about taking inspiration from Indiana Jones especially. Lara is presented as more than capable of taking care of herself. Even in the case of her adversaries getting the drop on her, she always manages to get out of true harm's way. And then at one point takes a nap on the storage part of their boat. I admittedly don't understand the logic there. I get she was tired, but collapsing on their boat just as asking for one of them to go down the storage place and kill her. I guess I admire her moxie, and this might be one place where they were trying to show her be vulnerable. I'm not really sure. Yes, that is actually my biggest problem with the storyline in this game, is just that random nap she took. So I guess that's not that bad then. But I do admire her moxie there. Oh, and don't go to grab your fallen gun if she's around. You'll only end up with a pair of broken testicles. And while we're not privy to any romantic details of her life in Tomb Raider, it seems as if she would also view her sex life as a sort of sport as well. She doesn't seem to mind sort of flirting with a few of the people that flirt with her, which really there's only Larson at the beginning. But in all of her sexy images, she seems to be in control of everything. Because she's focusing her attention to the center of the image, it sort of gives the impression that she's letting the viewer into a private moment of her life. This isn't like Dead or Alive Extreme, in which it feels like we are peeking in on unsuspecting women. Were she not fictional, this would give the impression of her being merely sexual and not objectified. But as a fictional character, this makes things a bit tricky, and for right now, though, just remember that at the very least, the sexual imagery surrounding the character suits the character that Eidos wanted to create it. It suits the personality that she was established with. And being secure in her sexuality is most likely why many women love her just as much as men. But let's wrap this video up, because we're going to be talking about Lara and her sexuality many times in the future. I was 6 when the first Tomb Raider came out, and Lara Croft was everywhere growing up. But I admittedly didn't really care. Even back then, the gameplay just didn't click with me when I was given it as a present. I would have rather been playing Mega Man Legends, Mario 64, or Final Fantasy than dealing with falling into spikes every 3 seconds. And by the time I had grown curious enough to play it all I could see of this Lara Croft was the over-sexualized nature of the character, and I didn't really want to play what I had written off as being a purely sexualized character for the male gaze. It wasn't until the past few years that I even knew that many women considered her to be an icon. Not only for being one of the first women in gaming, but some people even viewed her as a symbol for sex-positive female empowerment. So I had to enter this with an open mind. Lara Croft is a sex symbol to the point where Toby Gard left after the first game because he felt that he lacked any creative control over her existence. They were attempting to turn her essentially into a pin-up girl instead of an action heroine. And there really is no doubt that she was objectified and marketed just based on her sex appeal. But there was something special about her. I can kind of see that now despite not really enjoying my time with the game. Whereas many female characters very obviously lose their agency when they're sexualized, for the most part, Lara Croft seems to naturally fit into the role of a strong, confident, and sexual woman. For better or worse, that was Lara Croft. And it makes sense that despite her ridiculous proportions, many women would want to emulate her strength of self, badassery, and security in her sexuality. I don't know how long the next few entries on her will be. I have Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3, Revelations, the Crystal Dynamics trilogy, and Tomb Raider the Definitive Edition. Most likely the next few entries on her will be a bit shorter, because it takes a few games to really start any bit of extra personality in her at all. But till then though, ladies and gents, it's your story too. Stay classy, and please like and subscribe if you liked it. Please? Love you guys. Thanks very much.